Hi, everybody. I'm Brittany Lewis, a breaking news reporter here at Forbes. Joining me now is Gordon Chang, political commentator and author of Plan Red, China's Project to Destroy America. Gordon, thank you so much for joining me.
Well, thank you so much, Brittany.
I really appreciate the conversation, and I appreciate your perspective today because I think a defining moment in President Trump's second term, certainly a defining moment in J.D. Vance's tenure as vice president, was that White House meeting on Friday, the explosive meeting with those two leaders, as well as Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky. I'm curious as to what you think the world, the globe, the U.S. adversaries and allies alike were thinking when they saw this meeting play out live, as well as the fallout thereafter.
I think people were appalled. They were stunned. Certainly I was. I worry about the way the Chinese regime heard that meeting. What they heard was a fissure, a crack, maybe a split in the Western alliance. And I think that they believe that if the United States isn't willing to protect a victim of aggression, and Ukraine is a clear victim of Russian aggression, then the Chinese might start to think that the United States won't protect countries that China attacks in East Asia. Right now, we see China going hard after Japan, Taiwan, Philippines, Australia, New Zealand, and India. I think that the Chinese very much are on the warpath, and this is a conversation in the Oval Office that might embolden them to do something truly historic.
Let's talk about that a little further, because it seems like there was some revisionist history at play, calling Zelensky a dictator, not acknowledging that Russia did invade Ukraine, and that was the start of the war. If you're China and you're hearing that, what are you thinking?
You're thinking that Trump is not going to call Russia an aggressor. That means that we might not call China aggressor. I'm not saying that the Chinese are right in that assessment. In fact, I think they're wrong, but it doesn't matter what is true. What matters is how the Chinese regime views this. And so therefore, we've got to worry about their incorrect assessments of Trump's foreign policies. This is a world right now which is sort of almost on the edge of catastrophe. And I'm worried that any event could lead to unseen events, could lead to worst outcomes. This is very much like the situation in 1914, where you have the assassination of an archduke that leads to the world's first global conflict. We are sort of in the same position. Remember, we've got wars in Ukraine, we've got insurgencies in North Africa that look like wars, we got the war in the Middle East. China is involved in all of them. And if China believes that the United States is not able or not willing to oppose it, then we could see war in East Asia. And a war in East Asia would mean conflict around the globe.
And what do you think a war in East Asia, where does the United States sit in that right now?
Well, Japan and Philippines and Australia are U.S. treaty allies. We have obligations to defend them. We don't have a treaty obligation to defend Taiwan, but it's certainly in our interest to do so for various reasons. People talk about the chips. TSMC makes 92% of the world's most sophisticated chips. We can't allow the Chinese to have that, but they're more important and strategic concerns. So, for instance, since the 1800s, we have drawn our Western defense perimeter off the coast of East Asia, and Taiwan sits at the middle of that critical perimeter. Plus, also, we can't have China attacking and annexing a democracy at a time when it is in a full-on assault against not just the United States, but democracy in general. So there are a lot of interests here that the United States has in preserving peace and stability in East Asia, even if we don't have a treaty obligation to defend Taiwan.
Gordon, I've been watching these types of White House meetings now for years and years. I've never seen anything like that because they're usually an exercise in politeness in front of the reporters, saying something to the effect of, I'm so grateful that so-and-so leader is here. I'm excited for the conversation. Then the tougher conversations are behind closed doors, away from the press. That's not what we saw on Friday. In fact, in my reporting, I've never seen President Trump so angry. He struck a different tone when he was addressing Congress on Tuesday night, saying that the Ukrainian president has reached out to him, wrote him a letter saying that he's ready to have a deal. But the United States did pause military aid to Ukraine this week. So let's say there is a deal struck. Does China think differently about being emboldened to invade Taiwan, or even being more emboldened, rather?
Yeah, I think that we see China, which believes it now has an opening because the United States is not on the same page with its allies and friends and partners. Also, you got to go back to the day that Kabul fell. Taiwan was in the minds of the Chinese leaders that day because we saw Chinese propaganda say that when China attacked Taiwan, they didn't say if, by the way, they said when. Taiwan would fall within hours and the United States would not come to help because the United States failed in Afghanistan. So Chinese leaders view these events through the prism of their own aggression or potential aggression in East Asia. And that's why we've got to be extremely concerned at a point where the world is just so fragile. We just don't know what's going to happen. We have China and Russia working very closely together. We have China and Iran working together. This is a situation we haven't seen in our lifetimes. And these are the types of situations that history can remember, and remember because of the worst outcomes that resulted.
That's really alarming, and I am interested to see what plays out from that White House meeting when we look back at future events, if we can pinpoint that White House meeting to being the starter to them all. I know that you said China said when, not if, and I think that's really important. So do you agree? Do you think it's a matter of when and not if China invades Taiwan? And what specifically are you looking out for next?
Yeah. At the moment, I don't think that China would launch hostilities with an invasion of the main island of Taiwan. And the reason, Brittany, is because to do that, China would need a combined air, land, sea operation. That means Xi Jinping has to give some general or admiral almost complete control over the entire Chinese military. That would make that flag officer the most powerful figure in China. Xi Jinping, on his best days, wouldn't do that. He's certainly not going to do it now, where we see propaganda from the military organs very much challenging Xi Jinping. So, for instance, propaganda organs are praising, quote unquote, collective leadership. That's a direct challenge to Xi Jinping. So, although the Chinese military can engage in low-level provocations, as it has, for instance, against Australia in the last week, I don't think it's unified enough to actually invade Taiwan's main island. So, at least for the moment, I believe that's off the table. But that's not to say that Taiwan won't get involved in a war, because if there's a war someplace else, it will spread throughout East Asia and Taiwan will become embroiled in it.
I do now want to make a bit of a left turn here and ask you about tariffs because, as we know, earlier this week, President Trump escalated an ongoing trade war with China, slapped an additional 10% tariffs on Chinese imports. What's your reaction?
The reason for those tariffs are fentanyl sales. China has been deliberately behind the sale of fentanyl over the course of years. That results in the deaths of tens of thousands of Americans each year. We have tried to talk to China. China has made promises on fentanyl. It made promises to stop the fentanyl trade to President Obama in 2023, to President Trump in 2018, and to President Obama in 2016. Something had to be done. People I know don't like tariffs, but the point is, what are we going to do to stop that fentanyl trade? Also, China's continued to steal hundreds of billions of dollars of U.S. intellectual property. Remember, Trump's 2018 tariffs on China were for the theft. It's supposed to be a remedy. China is not moving. It won't move until in right directions until we impose those costs that are greater than the benefits it perceives it receives from all of this destructive behavior. So we're in a very bad place. You know, you have the Chinese threatening real war, kinetic war over these tariffs. That shows you how unhinged the Chinese leadership right now is. Shows you how bad their economy is. This is going to be a very, very fascinating situation because the Chinese right now are in a state of distress, and Trump knows it.
Do you think that these tariffs will get China to move in the way that the United States wants them to move in that direction? Because you did note that the Chinese embassy posted a very ominous message on social media. This is what they wrote. If war is what the U.S. wants, be it a tariff war, a trade war, or any other type of war, we're ready to fight till the end. You read that, what are you thinking?
I'm thinking that the Chinese economy is in a very bad state because that's not the type of statement that a confident power makes. Got to remember that Xi Jinping has turned his back on consumption as the basis of the Chinese economy. His only plan is to export his way out of a very distressed situation, which means that he needs access to the U.S. market. So when President Trump imposes across-the-board tariffs on China, even at a low rate, such as the 20% in the two tranches, it can have a significant effect on China. So I think that Xi Jinping is worried that President Trump's tariffs could actually tank the Chinese economy and could lead to a change in the political system in China. And that's why we're getting this hysterical language out of China's diplomats.
I think what we're looking out for next, because China did immediately respond, is April 2nd. President Trump this week announced that he will be slapping China with reciprocal tariffs as well then. But between now and then, what specifically are you looking out for?
Right now, I'm actually looking to see how Trump imposes tariffs on the rest of the world because China would be a part of that reciprocal tariff move. I think we're going to see quiet between now and April 2nd when we could see these reciprocal tariffs. You know, the thing about China, though, is that its economy is less than 2/3 the size of ours. And China actually fabricates and exaggerates its GDP, so it's even less than that. And the other thing is that, remember, we're the trade deficit country. Last year, China ran a merchandise trade surplus against us of $295.4 billion. So China's got the smaller economy. It's got the trade surplus. It has really no ammunition in a trade war. So I'm looking for the Chinese maybe to calm down between now and April 2nd.
Well, there's certainly a lot to look out for. And Gordon Chang, per usual, I always appreciate your perspective. You're welcome back anytime. Thank you for joining me.
Well, thank you so much, Brittany. I really appreciated this opportunity.